Good evening. This is Maestro Cortello with a Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite mod cast. Today I have a 1 versus 1 on Green Tooth Gorge. Hopefully a pretty good game. I'm not too familiar with these players, but I have the sense that they're kind of good. Probably better than me. Our first player is Lux. That's Latin for light, I think. But anyway, Lux as this green plague champion starts off as a ranged hero, kind of like the Tech Marine, can also heal like the Apothecary, and can become a tanky melee hero, depending on how you get him out. On the other side, we have PhatE, or PhatE, as this orc Kommando Nob, a fairly big orc, not as big as the war boss, but certainly bigger than the mech boy. Right now he's gone invisible. You can still kind of see that he has that twin-linked Shuda, which is pretty good damage. It's something like 33 DPS with 100% fire on the move. So we kind of have a duel of ranged heroes right now, both doing pretty good range damage. About the same, in fact, I think. Certainly in retail, the Plague Champion's range damage wasn't as good, but I think his damage actually has been increased in the mod. Over here we have Heretics, biting off a little more than they can chew. Sluggas against Heretics is kind of a questionable fight to start out, and certainly with the Shooter Boys supporting right there, that definitely wasn't going to go in favor of the Heretics. I'm not entirely sure who wins against just vanilla Sluggas versus vanilla Shooters. I know people certainly get annoyed by Heretics, but I kind of have this feeling that they kind of lose the matchup, at least in just a straight-up one-on-one fight. Of course, the game hardly ever takes form of just like one unit fighting another. There are just so many different variables between like what unit you have around for support, as well as like how much health each squad will have going into a fight. Well, that being said, I think kind of Sluggas versus Heretics to start out. I think it's actually kind of gonna be like a dangerous game of chicken to see like who retreats first, since both squads are gonna get pretty close to dying, and then if you start retreating, then the other squad is a melee squad that will start doing a ton of damage on retreat. Anyway, PhatE has kind of been aggressive with his Kommando Nob. He rushed over here to start taking some shots at the Plague Champion. The Plague Champion just kind of decided he didn't want that fight, which I was kind of surprised. I think with the damage increase for the Plague Champion in the mod, I believe his damage has been increased. I think he would kind of draw even in a range battle against the Kommando Nob, and I mean, if he had been in cover, he might have been able to win it, especially since I think the two of them in cover, I think that would actually favor the Plague Champion, since his damage over time is actually not affected by cover. Over here, both players have gone for, they have their starting melee unit, and then they got double ranged units. So double Chaos Space Marines for Lux, double Shooter Boys for PhatE. Now, the Shooters are the high DPS Tier 1 ranged unit, while the Chaos Space Marines are more of a durable Tier 1 ranged unit, and that's kind of their advantage. Their advantage is their durability, while the Shooter advantage is their DPS. Right now, I think this build is actually kind of going to favor Lux, especially with his Plague Champion there too. He's going to inflict a lot of bleed on those Shooters, while not taking that many losses himself, especially if he has his Heretics in the back healing. But I don't entirely like the way he's managing this engagement right now. Okay, now he does the right thing. He has his Chaos Space Marines getting healed by the worship from the Chaos Heretics. Worship from Chaos Heretics, Nurgle worship, heals your units over time. He did kind of take his Heretics out of the fight though, which I kind of disagree with. He wanted to recapture his natural requisition point. But right now he's having a little bit of trouble with that Luda squad out for PhatE. A suppression team from the Orcs has the highest health, actually not the highest health, has the second highest health out of suppression teams. And it also does good damage now in the Elite mod. This Kommando Nob has a melee charge, even with a gun. Definitely probably gonna get a model on this Chaos Space Marine squad. Actually, it now looks like he's not going to get a model on that squad. And this is a fight. This melee fight right here, I think, is actually going to favor the Chaos Space Marines. The Luda Boy squad is setting up again, but now the Plague Champion is in here, and he just forced melees with those Ludas to prevent them from firing. So right now, Lux is definitely winning on the engagements. He's winning on the engagements despite having... he has one less unit, although his units are kind of better. Mainly just the combination of the Chaos Space Marines and the Plague Champion will just be able to tank a lot more damage, and if he manages it right, he won't take many model losses. Most of his bleed will actually just come from the heretics. Although Lux is kind of winning on the fights, right now he's definitely losing on the map control. He hasn't really had his natural victory point. It was actually decapped at some point, along with his natural power point was decapped, and so is his natural victory point. And right now his forces are actually in a little bit of trouble. He's keeping this Chaos Space Marine on this Chaos Space Marine squad on the field, even though it's at 2 out of 3 models, just to kind of like keep that field presence. Right now he's kind of losing on the field presence, which is not entirely atypical for Chaos. Chaos being a race that is relatively slow on mobility, especially if you've got heretics being stationary, the Plague Champion who moves slower than most other units, and then just having one less unit. Although Lux did get Chaos Raptors, which will allow him to just hard counter that Luda squad. But the Luda squad right now is infiltrated, so Lux will not even be able to know where that Luda squad is until it starts firing, or unless his heretics get close. And this is a pretty smart play by PhatE, having his Luda squad kind of right in front of the victory point, not at maximum range, since suppression teams do more damage the closer they are to a unit. So any unit that starts capturing this point will take a ton of damage. But I think PhatE kind of jumped the gun there, especially suppressing Chaos Raptors. I think he kind of mismanaged that. Should have saved the suppression for a different unit instead of suppressing the unit that was actually going to counter his suppression team. Maybe kind of bait those. What would have been best would if he had baited the Chaos Raptors into jumping on his Shooter Boys and then suppressing it with the Luda. That would have been the best play he could have made there, because then the Chaos Raptors would probably not have the energy to jump on the Luda squad. As it is, this is a fight that's now kind of going in PhatE's favor, although PhatE's definitely taking a lot of bleed. He does have this Shooter squad in green cover, and they're still doing a lot of damage with a one big Shooter and the Nob on this Shooter squad. But it actually looks like PhatE lost one of the Shooters. And then this one now definitely in a lot of trouble with Chaos Raptors right there. Chaos Raptors, not the greatest unit for killing on retreat, but this Shooter Boy squad nearly dead, but I think it will get out of there. This Wabanner will definitely go down though. So PhatE's been winning quite significantly on the victory points. Still has 476 of his own, has a 3 cap. And Lux still hasn't even gotten this middle, despite being right here. Over a 200 VP lead from PhatE, but he's lost a bit. He's lost a bit on fighting. Even he suffered a squad wipe. Although PhatE is already in tier 2, already has a Weird Boy out, and now Lux is actually floating massive resources. I guess not quite, not quite paying attention to one hell of a resource float. Just starts tier 2 now. Could have had it for probably at least a minute. And right now we're seeing this Plague Champion, his only war gear is the Mucus Discharge, allows him to heal himself, and if he's close enough, he can also heal friendly units. You do have to be very close, though. Right now, Lux is kind of spread out. He took advantage of winning that engagement, as well as basically having the field presence to start capturing some points back for himself. Gonna get a 2 cap, actually get some victory points for him. The Kommando Nob from PhatE now actually has the special Shooter and the improved camouflage. So the improved camouflage removes the energy drain from the Commando's energy from his infiltration. I kind of like that upgrade. I play the Kommando a little bit. Kind of makes it easier to manage. I kind of like it because it just makes the Kommando a little bit easier to use, since you can kind of just have him sit around and idle a bit, and he won't lose energy from just being infiltrated. And Anyway, that weird boy uses a Warp Vomit right there. Warp Vomit is primarily a melee counter, since it stuns units. Wow, and then the weird boy gets off his normal shot, which is basically a plasma cannon. And I was going to say these heretics are in a ton of trouble, but they do activate Touch of Nurgle. And Touch of Nurgle is pretty much an engagement winner. As long as that's active, that's usually just a win for Chaos, and you kind of should not mess with it. You should kind of just retreat out of there. Maybe if you're playing one of the commanders who has a melee snare, like the Inquisitor or the Sorcerer, you can use the snare on the heretics. But I think Touch of Nurgle will actually outlast those snares. So Lux still definitely kind of behind on the map control. Setting up a Nurgle Shrine right here. Nurgle Shrine, when worshipped, will allow him to reinforce as well as heal. We now have a Blood Crusher out for Lux. Meanwhile, PhatE doesn't really have a hard counter, a hard vehicle counter, but he can upgrade his Ludaboy squad to a Beamy Death Gun. That Beamy Death Gun will do a ton of damage in a single shot, but upgrading to the Beamy Death Gun, which PhatE is doing, will force him to give up that suppression, and that is actually one of the good things about getting a vehicle against your opponent. Even if they get an AV weapon, usually getting an AV weapon means they're sacrificing something else. So this kind of means that Lux can actually use his Chaos Raptors now to focus on just the Shooter Boys, and he'll get a lot of bleed on those Shooter Boys. He can also use it to focus on the Weird Boy, even if they get stunned by Warp Vomit. That just means the Weird Boy is not taking shots at the Chaos Space Marines or the Plague Champion, or especially the Heretics. The Heretics do not want to get shot by that plasma shot from the Weird Boy. Weird Boy standard attack is basically a plasma cannon. And plasma cannons are good in general. First, they do knockback, and plasma cannon, I recently had a revelation, is probably the best damage type in the game, since it's good against literally all unit types. Has a bonus against heavy infantry and super heavy infantry, a 1.5 damage bonus, as well as doing full damage to regular infantry, and I think even full damage to vehicles. It's definitely good as AV. We have infiltrated Ludas right now, but the Weird Boy, I mean not the Weird Boy, the Blood Crusher charges in there, is right behind these Shooter Boys, which are now close to dead, and if these double Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines come and support in there, they probably could have taken out a few models off of that Luda squad, or possibly even wiped it. The Blood Crusher, as we saw, it took a huge amount of damage in a single shot, though. So it does have to be careful of that. It will get it should get healed. It seems like it's getting healed very slowly by the Chaos Heretic Worship. I wonder if it's going so slowly. I'm wondering if the Worship. I'm wondering if Shrine Worship is not as good when healing demons or something, because right now it seems to be doing, that worship seems to be quite terrible. Anyway, Plague Champion actually putting up a heavy bolter. You kind of don't see that a lot, and I think that there are a lot of times where we kind of forget about the Tech Marine-ish side of the Plague Champion, basically that he can build turrets and that he can repair. And this turret, this heavy bolter turret seems to be a bit different from other turrets. It seems to have low courage damage, and low courage damage is what causes suppression. So it suppresses slowly, but the good thing about it is that it has this massive firing arc. I'm pretty sure that's bigger than a Devastator firing arc. Meanwhile, though, PhatE, already in Tier 3, has this looted tank, already upgraded to reinforced plating. That is going to counter pretty much everything that Lux has right now. The Blood Crusher does have heavy melee, which means it can do damage to the looted tank, but it really, for the most part, can't really, it shouldn't be able to get in against the looted tank as long as the looted tank is being microed. So right now, most of the counters to the looted tank are very light counters, like, basically the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines are basically most of the counter for that. Right now, though, Lux is managing his engagements pretty well. He does see these Sluggers coming around for a decap, so that's where he sends Blood Crusher. The Sluggers, although they do very high DPS, do not do heavy melee, and only the only the Burna models and the Nob models do power melee, so it's going to just be light AV. Unfortunately, Lux has now forgotten about his Blood Crusher, and he will easily lose it. I'm kind of surprised to see that happen. I don't know where his attention is. He's kind of not doing anything right now. I don't know if maybe he just didn't want his Blood Crusher anymore or something. But I don't know. I feel like he shouldn't, unless he was pop-capped, which he actually was. So actually, okay. I was about to say, unless he was pop-capped, which he clearly was. I'm surprised to see him pop-capped, given how many units he has. But he's pop-capped, first of all, because he has a shrine, which takes up some population. I think the turret also takes up some population. And then he has aspiring champions on both of his Chaos Space Marine squads, as well as his Chaos Raptors. So basically, he did not have any population to build any kind of counter to this looted tank, which is, in a way, it almost seems like bizarre to me, since I fully expect, like, this doesn't seem like that big of an army to be pop-capped with, and I would expect, I mean, like, if I see a vehicle, I plan on getting, like, a Las Cannon Havoc, and a Korn, and a Tzeentch Dreadnought, and maybe even a Plague Marine squad, too. Wow, look at the damage that those looters took from the double Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines are really, really good. They just do a ton of damage. They are actually pretty much the best range unit in the game. They do have that Inferno damage type, which is just fantastic. It has a 1.25 bonus against heavy infantry, and it also does full damage to regular infantry as well as super heavy infantry. So it's an extremely good damage type, along with plasma cannon damage. It's one of the best infantry types. I mean, one of the best damage types in the game. We now have flash kits from PhatE, and we kind of see they took a long time to get suppressed by this turret, actually. These flash kits going to start losing members, though. Alright, they somehow managed to get out of there without losing any members. Shotgun blast from the Kommando Nob. I don't really think this is that great of a build from the Kommando Nob. That special shooter is very good against high model, low HP units, but for the most part, that does not characterize the Chaos Army. The only unit that really applies, the only unit that really can be described that way in the Chaos Army are Heretics. And right now the Heretics are mainly not really being used as fighting, so they're not exposed very much. They're mainly back here. Either they're worshipping the shrine, or right now they're actually repairing the shrine. So, I mean, he can do knockback with that special shooter, which actually can be a good melee counter. But right now, Lux has not really gone for a melee heavy build. In fact, he's gone for a very ranged heavy build. His only real melee unit, his only real effective melee unit is the Chaos Raptors, since his Heretics are mostly being used for support. And this range blob from Lux is really devastating. In fact, these flash kits probably do not even beat the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. That's probably just how good the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines are, especially when they're getting healed. Since Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, they're fully upgraded. They are fully upgraded right now. Their base DPS is something like 86, which is higher than most other ranged units. The only ranged units that really beat it are things like Terminators, Warp Spiders, and although Warp Spiders have higher base DPS, they have an inferior damage type. They do piercing damage, so they have penalties against super heavy infantry as well as heavy infantry. Lux kind of really pushing in hard for that looted tank wipe, and he does get it. Definitely took a lot of bleed in the process, although I think his Plague Marine squad will just about barely get out of there, although it's not even really like he needs it that much. I would actually say that he should not reinforce the models, maybe only reinforce one, and then use the population that he freed up from losing those models to get a different unit entirely. He's in tier 3. He almost has enough to get, I was going to say, he almost has enough to get a Land Raider Phobos, or even a Great Unclean One, although he does go for that Chaos Predator. And that's actually, I think that's a really good choice, considering the fact that he just took out, considering he just took out PhatE's tank. The tank from, I mean, the Chaos Predator would, especially with the Chaos Predator, especially with a las cannon, would definitely beat a looted tank. But having a tank when you know your opponent doesn't have a tank is even better. Although that being said, PhatE is, instead of getting tanks, first of all, he's using a Rocks, which wiped raptors that were backcapping. But anyway, Lux did cancel that tank, and then PhatE actually got Nobs out, which it's actually kind of a good thing that Lux did not get that tank, because I think the Nobs would have certainly threatened the tank, made it a lot less useful. Not outright countered it, though. So Lux, unfortunately, suffering some losses now, despite making a bit of a comeback. You know, he was down in VPs for a while from PhatE's early map control. And then he got it back, I think, from his defensive ranged blob, that turret, the shrine, the heretic worship, as well as the double Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. Right now, though, although these Nobs are going to be very good, Lux has the counters for it. He pretty much does have the counters for it. First of all, he's got these double Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, which are just going to do a ton of damage. That being said, PhatE is now using kind of the advantage of having these having these Nobs to kind of keep Lux busy because Lux is now using 2 out of his. I mean, he's actually using 3 out of his 4 units to counter just the Nobs. And I mean, he has the counter. He does have Nob counters, but right now those Nobs being on the field are kind of forcing Lux to utilize 3 out of his 4 units just to fight one of PhatE's units, which is hurting Lux on the map control, putting it back in PhatE's favor. And certainly, right now, Lux is definitely, I mean, PhatE's definitely benefiting from that fact, as well as the fact that he took out the Plague Marine squad. So right now it's PhatE has twice the army size, and I think this Chaos Space Marine squad might even go down if PhatE decides to do something with it. But now we do have Terminators, and I think those Terminators kind of, although Chaos Terminators are very good, they even took out a unit there. It's a bad call to just drop them right in the middle of the Orc army when all of your support just retreated. And then, as good as Terminators are, Lux is also just having a little bit of trouble, I think, keeping up with his resources right now. He's trying to reinforce those squads, get them back out on the field. This Terminator squad already lost 2 out of 3 models. He needs to get all of his units back over there. No, he should not worship. He needs to get all of these units back out there. I'm guessing he wants to worship so that the Terminators can start healing once they get in base. But he needs to get those Tzeentch Marines out there, as well as the Heretics. The Tzeentch Marines will start doing a ton of damage to the Terminators, and the Heretics can suppress and stall out. But right now, this game, I'm going to say, it really looks like it's going in favor of PhatE right now, because I don't think Lux is going to be able to get back out on the field in time and get 2 decaps off fast enough to get back in the game. So I think this is going to be a win for PhatE. I'm guessing that's why he kind of put those. Yeah, I mean, he can't even move the units fast enough. So that is the game. Game in favor of PhatE. A little bit of, obviously, PhatE starting off really strong, then Lux being really strong in the mid game, but then PhatE bringing it back in the end. Definitely had some really strong play by Lux, and this was definitely a game that was his to lose, whatever that means. Basically, he definitely had an advantage, and I think he was just a little careless at some point, losing that Plague Champion, losing a few other units when I think he kind of shouldn't. But I mean, it's always obviously so easy to just point out what someone did wrong in the game. Overall, it was a pretty good game, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good night.